Well, hey guys, we are here for our third conversation with the Brotherhood, and just talking about what it means to be a man. Let me front this conversation with a short discussion about a very long book that I worked my way through. It's called The Boy Crisis, and it was written by Warren Farrell. And the book basically, Warren Farrell is a guy who was a male feminist in the 70s and 80s. Mm-hmm. So he was fighting for the feminist cause. He was a guy, and he watched how feminism and how the development of our culture has affected men for the past 30, 40 years. Mm-hmm. And he writes this book, and he makes a lot of points. Let me make one. He speaks of us entering the age of the single option male at the same time that we enter the age of the multi-option female. Here's what he means by that. He means that for females, there are now multiple options. You may be a mother, you may be a provider, you may be you may be the loving one, you may be the disciplinarian. There are all kinds of roles here. For the male, he argues there is still only a single option. Right. Your job is to provide money, and provide money. Mm-hmm. If you're married, your job is to provide money in your house and keep your house going. That is society's role for you. And he said divorce then gives the woman the multiple option of being the homemaker or being the breadwinner. She could be the one, but even if she's the breadwinner or the homemaker, whichever one, it's still the divorced man's job to provide the money. So everybody hear me. We do not advocate divorce. We are not saying that men are beaten up and men are somehow an endangered species. I'm not trying to say that. Right. All right. But what I am saying is it's a different world in which to be a man. Yeah. And the expectations of the world around us becomes increasingly difficult. They demand that we provide, and yet the world also seems to be demanding that we let go of everything that was once defined as masculine. Mm-hmm. So we need you to become more feminine, less masculine, but still always provide. Right. Yeah. Now, how does the guy balance that? Let's just drop that on the table and start talking.
It was a good conversation. I'm going to grab the bacon.
There isn't anything to balance with that.
No, there's not. Right.
It's backing masculinity into a corner and saying this is who you are, and any other iterations of that is not accepted by society then. Mm-hmm. And we see this again played out in media.
Yes.
Like the roles that men have on television indicate what the expectations are of us by society.
Right.
So, I mean, I'm dating myself, but let's go back. Homer Simpson, he's an idiot, right. But he's the only one that provides on the show.
I'll date myself worse. Yeah. Go back to Full House.
Okay.
Yeah. Full House. I almost made my kids stop watching it.
Really?
Because the males in the program were all idiots.
Yeah.
And the young females were always the smart ones. Yeah. They were always right, and it was always the parental figures who were all male who were apologizing at the end of every episode. Right. I almost made my kids stop watching it just because I was offended.
Yeah. Al Bundy.
Al Bundy, good
I was
boy.
allowed to watch that show.
Yeah.
Me and my dad,
I snuck to watch
me and my dad is a ritual, and this may be why I am the way I am.
Yeah.
Every morning, 6 a.m., it would come on, and we would watch it in the morning as we were getting ready before I'd go to school. We would watch it. We would die to Al Bundy.
Help me out. Married with Family? Is that what that is?
Married with Children.
Married with Children.
Married
Okay,
with
got it.
Children.
Okay. Sorry, didn't watch that one.
That's right. Probably a good thing.
Good.
And then now you have Modern Family.
Yes.
And there's several iterations of the dad that's a bumbling idiot, but he's a provider.
Yes.
That one, it's starting to kind of change a little bit because they had several different father figures on that show.
Right.
And so they have all these different portrayals. But at the end of the day, the common thread is we're all idiots. And just go and make some money, and that's your role.
Right. Not just idiots. Men are considered dangerous idiots.
Sure.
Yeah. And again, this same author harkens back to the fact that men will almost as a predominance are the ones who take the danger professions, the death professions. now almost entirely men take the death professions, and he argues it's part of our development where boys had to be more disposable than girls because wars existed, but now there's less need. I'm not sure this is true. This is what he argues, but I'm speaking to the Marine now. There's less need for the warrior, and more often people kind of are afraid of that maleness. And now I have to be honest, I think this is wrong. I think you can be a man, masculine, and still play with your kids and love your kids and still cry when your kids skin their knee. And okay, and now I'm going to freak the whole crowd out. I think you could be a man, a masculine, and still like musicals. Sorry. You know, I'm pretty sure about this.
I agree. He just said he loves musicals.
They're my favorite.
Actually, that's pretty close. You know, so I think you could do these things, and I think that it'll be important. How do you balance being the man that society wants you to be, and being and being the man God made you to be? Right. And so Pastor Jordan is here, and he's from our church in Alexandria. He's campus pastor there. Jordan, let me ask you, what's your age?
Yeah, I'm 34.
34?
Yeah.
Just a baby.
Yeah.
Anyway, and how many kids you got? 83 now?
Yeah. No, we have 5 children. Yeah, 5 kids, yeah.
And their ages?
Yeah, so we have an 8-year-old, 7-year-old, 6-year-old. So we had 3 pretty crazy years there. And then a 2-year-old and a 2-month-old.
Okay, so let me toss it to you first. Yeah. I mean, how do you balance this? Because you're raising 4 sons and a daughter.
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
Yeah, a princess, so no one come near. So I know for us, a lot of it has to do with how we're raised, how your dad was raised, things like that. I know my father would mention, that he was raised and just like, the husband worked, he was a farmer, they worked and they came home. He was saying that, he never really saw his parents really ever show affection. That was just, it wasn't, they didn't love each other, it's just they really saw them kiss. My dad wanted to kind of combat that, so he would, kiss my mom in front of us, which was, everyone's like, oh, gross, but it was actually like really good for me to see, for see my dad, who was, the hardest working man I knew, come home and yet love his wife, in front of the children, how to be a good father, good parent, and so because of that, I took into how we raise our kids, because I'm a sensitive human being, I'm 290, and it was soaking wet, so I'm not a small person, but I emotionally. I can be pretty sensitive. Growing up, I'd talk to the girls, like, okay, yeah, I want to your feelings, talk to that, do that, a little sensitive. And then it wasn't until I got married that I could cry now at the drop of a hat. I was watching Little Giants the other day, and I don't want to spoil what happens in the movie, but Little Giants.
It's a crying movie.
When this kid, he gets the ball, and his father hadn't seen him play at all. He was always gone. And the kid, sees his dad in the end zone, and he runs to his father. I'm holding my kids, and I'm just like, I'm crying. I'm bawling, holding my kids, and my kids look up at me like, Dad, what's wrong? I'm like, oh, just allergies. It's allergy season. But it's just.
And that's how Jesus stands with it.
Yeah, always bring it back, Pastor Paul. But yeah, just for us, my wife is an excellent teammate with me, just to monitor that. Just because I am. I am like, in the fields is what you would say. I can be very easily in the fields, especially with my own kids. Yes, love my wife, and I got emotional on the wedding, when she was walking down because she was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. But just knowing that it's okay to do that, be tough, be strong, be who you are, and just giving it to God and just understanding, that this is how God made me, these emotions. Obviously, I can't just cry and be all over the place. But just understanding that, I can be strong, I can be the football player, but then it's a safe place to let your kids see you cry. It can be it's healthy for them to see you cry and kiss your wife as well.
Agree. Yeah. How do you balance this?
I don't cry. I just don't. But that's also because I never saw my father do that at all.
Sure.
My father. But I did seem affectionately love my mother, which was big because he was in the Marines, and so he was like this my hero, my idol. Like I saw my dad. It was so bad I would compare myself to him when I was in the Marine Corps because he ran perfect physical tests, and he ran 300s, and I was like always trying to get a 300. The closest I got was like a 297, and But then, shooting and all that other stuff, like I always compared
Don't they round?
Don't they round up?
Yeah, 300 months. They don't round up. No, they hold on to those points pretty hard. So I always had him and saw him do that, like love my mother, care for my mother. And the only time I saw the man cry twice, and it was when his mom died and when his dad died. Mm-hmm. That was it. Actually, 3 times. The other time was when I graduated boot camp. When I graduated boot camp, he came running up to me in tears because that was something that was huge.
Sure.
But for me, I don't often get emotional, but my wife is the perfect person to balance me in that, because I will be a little harder on the boys than I probably should. Sure. I'll expect more of them. I'll demand more of them. I will be the first one to say, you're 5 or 6, stop acting this way. And my wife's the first one that says, Brandon, they're 5 or 6, they're acting this way.
Sure.
I'm like, okay, yeah, that's true. Yeah. He's allowed to be a little upset. And
why don't you have a job?
I'm tired of feeding you. For me, I balance it as me and Leah kind of put this together as a really healthy combatant to this culture that seems to be kind of taking root. And we allow our kids, and the boys in particular, to watch things that may be classified as girls, but we do that so that they don't feel like I'm only supposed to be this one way. Right? Like I don't want to back them into a corner and say, you know what, because you liked horses, right? And so Grayson went through a period where he loved horses. Right. But My Little Pony has horses. Right. And so it killed my soul at first. Until my wife, who explained it to me, and we kind of sat down and said, we need to do this. We were able to teach him and show him, like, hey, you can watch this stuff. Right. And then I would make sure I walked out as a man, like, hey, this is how a man acts. This is how he provides for his family but loves his wife. I always make a joke when I come in the house. They'll come running to me, Dad, and I sometimes won't even touch them, like ignore them, and say, I'm going to go hug your mother first. Yeah. And make it a point to say, I'm not going to. Yeah. And there's times where now Grayson, I'll be leaving the house, and he'll be like, Dad, don't forget to give Mom a hug and kiss. Like, he'll be reminding me, like, hey, Dad, don't forget to do this stuff. So walking it out, I think, is the biggest thing. And then allowing them to have the space as a kid to express that more emotional side, but also letting them know that they need to handle it too. Like there's a balance, because if you don't allow them to experience it at all, I think they'll get to an age where, and I've dealt with those guys in the Marines, where all of a sudden you're dealing with, this guy needs 20 years of counseling because he's never dealt with his emotions in his life, because his dad said you don't ever talk about them, you don't ever deal with them. But then I also don't want to create a bunch of pansies either. So like there's a balance between the two.
Yeah. I think it matters too, the setting you come from. Like your parents were a solid marriage and in the church, and I actually knew, for anybody that I knew Jordan's dad probably before Jordan was around. So, and then your parents were together, and you're Ohio, right?
Yeah.
And so you're in Indiana, Indianapolis, and your parents. Indianapolis, and I'm from the backwoods of North Carolina. And so,
I was in Indianapolis by way of Mississippi.
My parents were divorced. My mom and dad divorced, and then my mom remarried. So my male figure in my life was actually a stepdad.
Yeah, mine too.
My stepdad did not show emotions to my mother or to any of us. There was no emotion. There was no hugging. I don't know that there was ever been a day when I hugged my stepdad. And so we just didn't do that. He loved us. We knew that. Right. But we just didn't do that. So, what about?
Pretty much the same. I was raised by my grandparents, and so you've got a big generational gap there. And my grandfather, born during the Depression, raised in segregated South, went to war. Like, they don't make people like him anymore. And with that, he wasn't there emotionally for me. But I got to see, he modeled provider. Yes. And so if there was one thing that I learned from him, was work ethic. And anytime I feel that I'm disappointing him is when I put the pressure on myself to go, I'm not living up to that model that was shown for me, that example that was laid out. so about, I don't know, it was a couple years ago, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, for the first time, he's getting soft in his old age. He's 87 now. For the first time, he looked me in my eyes, and it was random. It wasn't like we shared this moment, but it was just like, I got to get this out and let him know. Yeah. And he just looked at me and goes, "I love you, boy." And that was it. Yeah. And the awkward, like, quick hug, and then
the 3 pats.
Yeah. Back in the ball game, son. Good job.
And for any of you that don't have somebody like that in your life, when that moment comes, "Love you, boy," and they move on, like the world stops, the sun comes out, the birds start to sing rainbows, and the whole thing happens.
It was that moment. I could have gotten raptured at that moment. It's like, all right, this is it. This is the best it's gonna get right here. But since then, I've heard it more. Not often, but I've heard it more from him, and more so than anything, he says, "I'm proud of you." Right. And I think, gosh, that's something that men need to hear from a father figure or another mentor or something. Right. Even if they don't hear, we need to hear, "I love you." We need to, say that. But we also need to hear, "I'm proud of you." Yes. And I love the story of Jesus' baptism. When he's there in the water and that moment happens, the heavens part, and you hear James Earl Jones like speak and affirm him. He's like,
"I've got
this is my son,
in whom I am well pleased."
He says, "This is my son." So he affirms who he is. He tells him, "I love him, whom I love, and in whom I'm well pleased." He tells him, "I'm proud of him." And he doesn't do that in a private moment. He does that in front of other people. Right. And like, that's the model that all of us desire. We all crave that, and that's what we should all try and be for somebody else, for our own sons, for our own kids, for others that are up under us.
And you've got one daughter and 4 sons.
4 sons, yeah.
You've got 2 daughters and 1 son. You got 3 boys.
All boys.
I had 3 boys.
Yep. God help us all.
Bless you.
I'm assuming, because I have a granddaughter now, so I'm learning. Yeah. But I'm assuming that raising girls is a little softer, a little more delicate. Like with my boys, yes, they understood I loved them. Yes, I would hug them. I always made sure to do that because I didn't want them to come up the way I did, with none of that showing up in the house. Right. We would do things like make sure I would leave with Tina to go out to eat, or I would take Tina to a cool place and not take them with me. And they're like, "Why can't we come?" I said, "Because you're not my girlfriend." And we had a rule in the house: if you upset my girlfriend, you will have ruined my day. Therefore, I'm going to ruin yours. And so there are all these rules in the house like that. But it wasn't. I guess as I was raising boys, I wanted them to know I loved them, and I wanted them to know I would hug them. But there was nothing delicate about it, I guess is the right way to say it. But I also didn't want them to grow up hard, but I also didn't want them to grow up soft.
Right. It's balance.
Yeah.
Yeah. So girls are a little bit tougher in that regard. I'm actually thankful. Like, God's a much deeper thinker than we ever could imagine. And I think he knew that I would have just repeated the cycle probably that I had and been kind of hard and unemotional if I didn't have girls first. So he gave me 2 girls to soften me up a little bit, to show me that it's okay to be emotive. It's okay to be emotional. And that was then in preparation for my son that was coming. And so that he wouldn't just be a generational process of hard men that, are all the same. You're just a provider. You're very one-sided, that sort of thing. So I'm thankful. I didn't cry very much until I had girls. And now it doesn't take much.
I didn't cry very much till I turned 50. And now I'm useless. So
I got 20 years.
I can cry at a football game. I think you got hurt.
When they do the flyover, you're just like, I love it.
I mean, I do get emotional. That gets me. It's different.
Well, he has one single tear and he can suck it back up in his...
I think it's important. I don't know. Okay. guy, grew up on a farm. My favorite work was splitting wood and baling hay and throwing the bales around. I love hard work, love the fit, and I was a music major.
Sure. Yeah.
Well, there's balance there, bro.
You know what I'm saying?
Balance.
Yeah, there is.
So I think there's got to be real balance for men. There are times that you need to be soft, and there are times you need to be just rock hard and just fighting it out, immovable and melting. You know, and I think the challenge is figuring out the two. Gary Smalley. I'll age myself a lot because none of you even know who that is. Okay, Gary Smalley wrote a book years ago, and he talked about swords. And men always carry swords, is the way he said it. He said, and in the work world, we carry this iron, steel, silver sword. And it's hard, and it's cold, and it cuts, and it does the job. And when we come home, we always carry a sword. He said, but what men tend to fail to do is take the iron, steel, whatever, the silver sword, and put it away above the mantle, and take up the softer, warmer, golden sword. Still the warrior, still the man, but much softer, much, much, much more careful. And some men try to take the golden sword to work, and it doesn't work.
Right.
Or try to bring the silver sword home. And that's a great analogy. I've loved that analogy for, I guess, 25 years, 25, 30 years. And so I think that balance is tough to strike.
I've heard it a different way, a different analogy. The four faces of a man, kind of borrowing from the prophecy in Ezekiel, and then a similar one in Revelation that John had. About the four faces of the angel, and there's a lion. I'm not going to remember them all. There's a man, there's an eagle, and an ox.
Yes.
And the balance is they're all on one body, but there are different settings that calls for one or the other to take the lead. And what happens is, I've heard it another way, that you have a king, a warrior, a shepherd, and I forget the fourth one. But when the warrior comes home, that's the wrong face to be showing to the wife and to the children, because that person will just be a bull in a china shop. The king is the one that's supposed to be at home, but even the king has to stay in balance, not to lord his authority over the family. The king has to
take out the trash.
That's right. That's right. I mean, you know, and so there are all these different faces and facets of manhood that we have to learn how to appropriately discern the setting that we should wear that particular face in.
And I struggled with that when I was younger, because we got married when we were 21. And I would, coming in the Marine Corps, I would bring the warrior home all the time. And it would be hard to step out of that, and I couldn't understand, why she didn't just submit to my authority. Because I had it at work.
I'm sorry, I've met your wife. That's
right? Like, you guys see, there was like years, right? Where we had to balance that and figure that out. And it was trying to understand that there's moments when I needed to, and now that I'm older, it's like I got it, but then I didn't, of bringing this warrior attitude into the house. And trying to run things, and then being a leader at work and leading, sometimes 20, 25, 30 men that are difficult to lead. And sometimes it's like herding cats. And then I come home and it's like, now I've got to lead my wife, but we're co-leading, but I'm expected to lead. How does this balance work? And it's this weird, messy contortion thing that we're trying to figure out. And it took a lot of work to get there. And I think that it's like you were saying, it's really important. I like the sword thing of being able to rest one, but you're still going to need one, because you got to be able to, like, somebody comes into the house, if somebody comes into the house, you're going to see the wrong end of my sword, right? It's going to be real bad for you.
Doesn't matter how long it is.
No, it's
whether it's gold or silver, it doesn't matter.
I'll grab both of them. I don't care. You come in my house, you better come for a fight.
And like what were you saying? It's just exactly true. And I know for me, I had to learn it the hard way and still continue to do so.
Me too.
But just, we'd say we work really hard. That's instilled us. We're men, and we've talked about that. That we need to make the money. We do really well at work. People respect us. We're we're revered, whatever it is, and you come home and then you're like, well, the wife isn't doing this, the kids aren't doing this, and there's a sense of like, well, I'm not respected, but that doesn't really carry over. What you do at work doesn't really necessarily carry over to what's going to happen at home.
Yeah,
and so just understanding that there's going to be give and take, and you're joining. If your wife's at home, you're joining in the new work environment, and it's a team effort, and you need to, in a sense, not that the children are your employees at that point, but you need to gain their respect as well, just like you are in the workplace. And so just because you're doing something great, and in the same way, if we have a horrible day, these kids, don't even know about it either, but they know daddy's home. Daddy needs to, to lead me or play with me, whatever. And so just to understand, just because you do something good or bad at work, the kids don't know, and that's okay. You have a clean slate when you get home.
In fact, I'll take it a level further. I think one of the greatest advantages, how do I say this, advantages, is that the right word? One of the key assets to a man that is successful, I mean really successful. I don't mean he piled up a bunch of money in a bank or he owns a bunch of stuff. Really successful is a significant, formidable woman with him. Likewise, a woman that is successful, a significant, formidable. And I remember the first time this dawned on me. I had gone to, our church had grown, and the Wesleyan Church used to do this thing called Roundtable. And they would bring all the pastors together that pastored at that time. It was churches of 500 or greater. New Life had just gotten to that average, though we were actually a church of about 1,000. Our average is in the right time frame, the way the denominator, we'd just gotten there. So Tina and I went to our first one of these gatherings. I'm sitting around in this room with all these men that have been heroes to me. And I literally, when I introduced myself the first time, I cried. I was just so overwhelmed by just being in the room. But I remember sitting at dinner with them or something. I forget the exact setting. I looked around, and all of them had these wives that, I don't mean this the way I'm going to say it, but I was afraid of all those women. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? I mean, they were formidable. Yeah. And I remember going,
really big.
No, don't take me there. But strong women. Yeah. And I remember going,
my man said big.
I remember going, all these guys have these formidable wives. Yeah. And I turned around, I looked at Tina and went, and I went, oh, okay. And I began to realize, she was that. Yeah. And I always knew she and I did this together. I always knew we worked together, and I always knew she had as much to do with success as I did. But I don't think I realized that part of the reason I could be strong was that she was.
Right. Oh yeah.
Yeah. And I just think, sometimes when culture's beating men down, men feel like they need to push everybody else down to get themselves back up.
Sure.
Yeah. When in reality, that woman that God has blessed you with, that woman that has agreed somehow in a vow to put up with you, which by the way is more than any of us could have asked for, she's, if God gives you a solid, formidable wife, God has given you the best gift in your life.
Yeah.
So
there should be a little fear that's invoked in you when you think about your wife. Like,
Come on, what do you do when you hear your wife's voice?
There's moments when she says my name and it's in a different tone. When I'm like, I've done something. I've done it. And it's hilarious because she's tiny. She's tiny, but she's and this is what's really funny, and this is true. There's not a lot of things people can say to push my buttons, but my wife knows, and she's one of the ones that, like, most time people can say and call me whatever and say whatever, like, I'm not worried about you. But I do this where I want my wife to be to have that same attitude of, like, I'm proud of you, you're doing good, and that means so much as a man, at least for me. When she, just this last week, we, with the whole coronavirus, we've been scrambling around, and we tried to figure out how to take our church from no online platform at all to having an online platform in 3 days. And so I'm running around, like, losing my sleep and hair trying to figure this out, and learning programs I never knew how to learn. And then it finally comes down, and she said, just yesterday, she comes up and she gives me a hug just out of nowhere, and I'm like, over my computer, and she said, I'm really proud of you. And I said, thank you. And she goes, you're a great husband, you're a great father, you're a great pastor, you did so well in trying to get these people that message, and I'm lucky to have you, and they're lucky to have you. And it's like, hearing that from somebody like
Here's the angel choir.
hearing that from somebody like that just means so much, and if and men got to do the same thing for our wives too. We got to. There's moments that sometimes I sit back and I look. She busted her tail putting together kids stuff for all of them, and I went up and I told her, I said, that was awesome. That was so great that you put all that work in together. And I think that's a big part of it. It's when you realize you have a formidable wife or somebody who's sitting across a table and you don't want to fight them. When I was younger, it was a battle for power. But now that I've gotten a little bit more seasoned, I'm like, no, you're actually my greatest secret weapon.
Yeah.
Like if I can get you to work with me, we're unstoppable, right? If we stop arguing like that. Once I started to figure it out, a little bit later, I was more 29 probably by the time I got it, but it was game changing for us.
Yeah, my wife's the same way. Like my wife's high capacity. She's a leader in her own right, in her field, respected, and all that sort of stuff. And so the fun dance that we do sometimes is she can step into my world but lower herself to submit so that she doesn't undermine my authority in an area that I'm supposed to lead. And then I do the same thing when I go into her space. Which is lower myself to like, you're the expert, you're, and try and prop her up. And one thing I've learned in our relationship is I thought I was all a physical touch love language guy. I was like, this is all I need, man. Sorry.
Are you good? That made me uncomfortable. Like my skin's crawling for you, dude. That was
You'll be all right.
Do we have hand sanitizer? Hand sanitizer.
Sorry. But I thought that was all I needed. Right. But what I actually learned was the most powerful things that come from my wife are often her words. When she affirms me like that, and just looking at Ephesians when it talks about men were supposed to love our wives, but women are supposed to respect us. And when I see that from her, when I see her giving me respect, or when she says, "I'm proud of you, babe," I can strut like a peacock. When I get that from her.
Well, see, for me, words for me from anybody else is awkward and weird. But I do need that from her. And I just think, I guess what I'm wanting us to talk about is the fact that I think when society presses us into these molds, it actually causes men to be less soft, caring, and submissive because they're trying to demand that respect they feel like they're not getting. When in reality, you want to earn that respect by sometimes being the soft one and sometimes being the one that defends. I mean, Tina at the church has always been at the center of what we do. But there was this one conflict back in North Carolina, and they wanted to call her in front of the board because they wanted her to explain. And I just looked at them and I said, no. So what do you mean? I said, no, you will never sit my wife in front of this board and ask her questions. No. And if you need to fire me, you just need to let me know. That won't happen. And in that moment, I'm defending her. There have been other moments where she's defended me, and to understand that, I don't know, that balance. This is a word we're using a lot today. That balance between the two. I think men are better men when they are beside strong women and they all respect each other and work together. So
I know I jumped in. Sorry, but I was feeling it.
Go ahead. It's like double Dutch.
For us, I'm just so much of the teamwork. We always talk about, you're my teammate. You can say it's as corny as you want, but Karen and I, we always, I need my teammate. That's what we refer to each other. And she is so strong, so solid. She is so eloquent. She's beautiful. All the positives. And then there are times when I come home and I just I ruin everything that's happening. I mess up. And she's strong. But then there are days, very few days, where it switches. It switches, and she's just having a rough day, and I'm able to come in and just we kind of swap roles, if you will. But that comes back to because her and I daily pray about having God be the foundation and leading us and giving us patience and just saying, hey, we're a team. And God comes through every time, every single time. There are situations that 1 week that will just everything's going off the rails and I'm freaking out. And Kara is strong, my wife is strong. And then there are times in that very next week it's the exact same thing, but it just switches roles. We're protected because the Holy Spirit has been with us, and that where it hasn't happened all at once. It's not both of us being down. It's always one of us reaching down and picking the other one up, because we're able to do that because of the Holy Spirit. And that's one thing he's been the foundation since day one. Yeah. And that's, it's because there are days when I lose it, and there are days, very few, where she loses it as well. But because of God's guidance and because God's provision, we're able to be a team together and help each other out.
Isn't it cool being the guy to be able, and I think it's important too, that we're able to step into that role and be, for lack of a better phrase, the hero when she's having a day. Because some of the things that I love doing the most is when I walk in and I see she's had a bad day, and I can set my work down and say, go take care of what you need to. I've got the kids. And it's coming in, and it feels good. And I think that's a part that men have to be able to do, is we have to be able to come in and switch swords. We have to be able to sit our laptop down and pick up the diaper bag and say, I'm ready to go, and then go after it. A couple weeks ago, I had to go to church when we were still allowed to have church. I had to go to church and had to take all 3 kids because she wasn't feeling well. And it was great for me and I felt so valued to be able to come in and say, I'm going to take all of them. I'm going to take all of them. You need to rest. And then, but she does the same thing for me when she knows that I'm grinding it out and I need an extra hour or 2 downstairs to really grind out this message, or it's not coming together, and she knows I'm struggling. She'll say, I'll take the kids, sweetheart. I'll take care of bedtime. You go do what you need to do. And I think that balance is incredibly important, like what you're saying, of being able to realize high and low, and then allowing the Holy Spirit to guide both of you when the right time to do that.
He does. He'll do it.
So let's wrap this up this way. I was at a conference some years ago, and y'all remember the author, he's still around, John Eldridge. He wrote these great books, these great man books. You're out in the woods and you're in the wilderness and you're climbing a mountain and you're killing your dinner.
That's why I have chest hair to this day.
I need to read.
I'm not even going to chase that. But Eldridge spoke at this conference, and he writes these wonderful Maximus man books, right? Andy Stanley followed him. And Andy Stanley walks on the stage and said, I love that guy. And then he says, but I got a problem. And he said, does Maximus ever have to take out the trash? Okay, they fixed it. I think it was planned. But anyway, it was interesting to hear that, and it suddenly dawned on me. Being a man, a real man, is being the gladiator who can do the dishes. And I think that's why it's hard. I think that's why it's difficult. I think that's why so many people struggle with it. And quite frankly, when we fail at it, we do become frightening. When we fail at it, we either become fainting and we're not helpful at all, or we become frightening and we're dominating, because that balance has to be there, that strength and that softness. I think that's the hard part to balance as a man, and I think the only way you ultimately can figure it out is have the Holy Spirit help you through it.
So that's right.
Well, you guys work at it. We didn't answer any questions, but we enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you.
So.
All right, guys, this wraps it up for episode 3 of Brotherhood. We hope you guys like, share, subscribe, post this on your own social media platforms, and we'll see you guys next time.
All right. Thank you.